This is CyberShorts Episode 5, The Corporate Life, by Nick Burnette. Michael Goodman was a hard-working corporate man, nowhere near the top, but the top was more visible than the bottom. He was a salaried man and a section supervisor. After 10 years of long nights and always filling in, Michael Goodman had become an important cog in the corporate machine. The first boss to the new guys, an up-and-comer. He was black. He wore a nice suit. The shirt under the suit had blood on the collar from the man he'd just killed. He stood on the lookout of the 104th floor of Sethren Tower, oblivious to the beautiful skyline, oblivious to the shimmering city lights or the mountains in the distance. 20 floors down was another lookout, with its own majestic view of the city, and he could just see the outline of his boss, Bob Weasel Jackson, dead. Shit. Michael, no. Come on, snap out of it. He let himself fall apart for just a moment. Then he'd need to get it back together, or he may as well join Bob right now. He was alone. Bob's death was about to send triggers throughout the company, and that meant security personnel. It wouldn't take long to piece together what just happened to Bob, and it wouldn't take long to pin it on Michael. This was bad. This was all very bad. He'd just killed his boss. He'd just killed a member of upper management. An alert went off on his cellular phone. Security issue, management will report in. That meant Bob's heart had stopped. No big surprise. And it triggered the automated response. Bob was that important. His well-being was a top company priority. His mind raced for options and for ways out of this, realizing it would be a miracle just getting out of the building. He'd only overreacted for a split second, but that was all it took. He'd smashed Bob in the face with a stapler, of all things, and in a rage grabbed Bob by the chest and carried him to his death. Murder wasn't his intent. It was all just an emotional response. There might be a way out of this, but blood on his shirt collar was the first obstacle. He naturally kept a change of clothes in his office, but it was across the building and too far away considering how much time he figured on having. Instead, he stripped his shirt off as he left the terrace and entered Bob's adjoining office, a much nicer office than his own, complete with a private bedroom and gym. He stole one of Bob's buttoned shirts and put it on underneath his suit jacket, which didn't have blood on it. Cameras, security teams. I better go to the meeting first to avoid raising suspicion. Then I'll find a way out of here. As Michael washed his hands and splashed water in his face, he knew that getting out of the tower would be the first miracle, and he'd need a dozen more. Getting away wasn't a solution. It'd point guilt at him, and he'd be on the run for who knows how long until they found him. And yes, they'd find him, and they'd make an example of him. One problem at a time. Michael left Bob's office and proceeded down the hallway until running into John Corden, another one of the management team and a total kiss-ass to anyone who had the power to promote him. It had worked for him at least this much, but John's career stagnated. Now, John spent more time cornering the new girls and inhaling cocaine than he did working from his upper office. He'd rather not walk with John, but there was no way to naturally avoid it now, so Michael casually walked side by side down the hallway. Any idea what this is about? A summons from security has to be something important, John said, matching stride with Michael. Probably nothing, Michael replied, worried his answer sounded too curt. Even the way he walked felt guilty. Funny, John said, earning a look from Michael. John was staring at Michael's neck. Well, it's just your shirt. It's Pima fabric, he said, pointing at Michael's collar. You wear twilled cotton dress shirts. Only Bob wears Pima. Speaking of which, maybe we should wait for him, he asked, looking down the hallway behind them. Michael shook his head. No, Bob probably beat us there already, he said, giving him a look like only idiots knew such things about fabric, while also trying to stop the panic from appearing on his face. He didn't realize Bob only wore Pima fabrics. He didn't realize he'd already pointed the blame his way. So far, This wasn't going well. I'm a fan of elegance. Bob doesn't own a shirt that isn't Pima thread. He imports them from those badlands in Arizona. A flashy statement of power from a powerful man. You didn't borrow one of his shirts, did you? John asked, an obvious joke to him. Michael gave him a look of silence. This damn shirt was going to give him away. Never mind the CCTVs. John and his fabric fetish was about to expose him. John's expression faltered, as he didn't know how to take the awkward silence, and they traveled down an elevator to the 101st floor, where the conference room waited for them. They were joined by at least 15 other managers. Looking around the office, Bob was noticeably absent. Cade Ladd and Jack Sethren were absent too, though nobody expected Jack Sethren, owner of the company and Sethren Tower, to be summoned anywhere. Angela Hunter addressed them. She'd taken over as head of security after Pham Nhu retired. Thank you for coming. At this time, I must inform you we've had a serious incident. Bob Jackson has fallen from his lookout floor. Bob is dead. Michael sat behind John and watched the back of his head. When John heard Bob was dead, John turned his head and made eye contact with Michael. This garnered a flood of whispers that stopped when Angela raised her hand. As a member of senior management, this loss affects us greatly. Additionally, it may have been an attack. We are reviewing the cameras to see what happened. Until then, everyone needs to be on alert. Report anything suspicious. If this was an attack, we need to stop it immediately. She let the room swell with comments before raising her hand again. Lastly, until we know more, security has the building locked down. No one leaves until given my express permission. The powerful men and women filling the corporate office knew better than to openly protest. A never-spoken culture of their position, but nobody liked that last part. It was the least of Michael's worries. He watched John stand from his chair and approach Angela, the head of security. Michael wasn't getting out of this tower, but he wasn't under arrest yet. John was a problem, and he'd be pointing the shirt spotlight at Michael very quickly. But the bigger spotlight were those CCTVs. John would have to wait. John had left his suit jacket slung on the back of his chair during the meeting. Michael approached it and deftly removed John's keycard from it. That could minimize the amount of traveling John did trying to point suspicion at Michael. It might also come in handy. Michael feigned calm walking with his fellow managers. He veered away from the gaggle and hit the stairway, thinking stairs would be better than elevators. Elevators on management floors required clearance and kept logs. He didn't need anyone knowing his movements right now. He popped open the doorway to the stairs and for a brief moment imagined how long it would take to get to the bottom of the tower, admiring the cardio of anyone who could do it. His daydream ended halfway down when 2 Sethren security guards met him at a checkpoint at the doorway. Sorry, sir. This area is secured. Michael put on his best disappointed manager and you should be worried about me face, while a suitable lie worked its way to his lips. He almost claimed Angela had sent him to grab the elevator logs, but that could get easily checked and easily debunked, putting him in a bad spot. Do you know who I am? Get out of the way, he ordered. You never knew. Sorry, sir, but not without approval. I can call Angela and get you cleared, the guard said, unmoved. So much for that idea. Good for them, Michael thought, lamenting the efficiency of his own security. The Sethren Company guards were well trained, Michael now realized, as they refused to budge. While typical employees would cower at the devastation any level of management could deliver, their guards must have been thoroughly backed by Angela for such events. I can tell her myself, Michael sneered and went back up the stairs. The sound of his own feet offered waves of panic as he desperately plotted getting to the CCTV room. In a few moments, he was back on the meeting floor where he saw John talking to security down the hall. Knowing time was against him, he practically sprinted towards the maintenance elevator. If there was any path that might be overlooked, it was this one. He used John's keycard so it wouldn't point to him. When the elevator reopened, he was delighted there was no checkpoint waiting for him. Down the hallway, he spotted Angela and Bradford, Bob's protege, en route to the CCTV room. They had a security guard with them. Michael's chest rose as he fought to keep calm. He was versed in treating each crisis as a natural problem to solve, something he was actually quite good at, a direct skill he employed daily from his office. Getting into the CCTV room was impossible without clearance, so it was probably a good thing Angela was there, because she could get them in the door. But the security guard was a cybernetically enhanced soldier, and he would be faster and stronger than Michael, with personal armor plating to boot. That was a problem. Well, what are you expecting to do to Angela and Bradford, big guy? Ask them to go along with it? Michael hit the emergency stop button on the elevator and walked out to join them. Michael? Bradford asked, curious. I have just as much interest in finding out what happened as you do. Bob was a mentor to me too, Michael said. Bradford's eyes flashed with positioning and who would take Bob's vacant spot. Of course, Bradford said, not wanting to show his political scheming in a time of grief. As they reached the door to the CCTV control room, the elevator bell gave a loud and persistent alert, which it did when it was stuck, which it was, thanks to Michael. Go check it out, Angela ordered. The guard left to inspect the elevator while Angela, Bradford, and Michael entered the CCTV room. Michael entered last and silently locked the door behind him. He only had one option here, and he didn't like it one bit. But Michael knew the score. There wasn't going to be jail time for this. Corporations in New Seattle City had their own justice, their own law. They used the local police at their leisure, and handled things in-house when they deemed necessary. They'd kill him, it was certain. Michael was a dead man, unless he kept them from finding out. Yes, he was guilty, but guilt ran like bedbugs in this company. Bob was no saint, and neither was Bradford, or Angela. This was survival of the fittest, and Michael was desperate to survive. Angela sat down at the monitor and pulled up the interface. Michael stood behind both her and Bradford, which was easy since Bradford wouldn't physically allow him to be any closer, already jockeying for that promotion, already wanting credit for the investigation into Bob's death. Good. They'd never see it coming, but he lamented what he had to do. As the camera accessed the floor where Michael had thrown Bob to his death, Michael could make out the back of his head very clearly. He was the only black manager in Sethren Tower, after all. They watched as Bob walked on screen, sending flashbacks through Michael. The monitor displayed a picture just before Bob pushed that wrong, fatal button. Angela's phone was on the table, and an incoming call from John paused the show. It was survival of the fittest. He grabbed Angela by the head and snapped her neck in one swift motion. The phone continued to ring. Bradford ran for the door but discovered it locked. Michael knew he had to be quick, because a locked door wouldn't stop the security guard from entering if he heard commotion. He punched Bradford in the solar plexus, doubling him over. With Bradford's head forward, he applied a headlock and squeezed him around the neck, pulling him away from the door as Bradford tried kicking in a desperate panic. Michael held on until certain he didn't need to squeeze anymore. Then Bradford's body collapsed on the floor. He stood there with his new victims. Shit. When he woke up this morning, he never predicted how today would go. Michael focused. He accessed the live CCTV and found the hallway outside their room, where the guard was still at the elevator making a report or something. They logged detailed reports of everything, which was great because that meant he had time. Michael stared at the recorded view of himself just before Bob's death, wondering how to fix this. He wasn't an IT guy and knew little about quantum hard drives, but he knew they didn't like fire. He grabbed the power cords and used a desk pen to strip the insulation from them. Then he twisted some live wires together and jammed them back into the wall socket. The makeshift loop overloaded the drive's circuit protectors, and within seconds, smoke shot up, then a burst of sparks. Fire quickly leapt from hard drive to hard drive. If he was lucky, it would be enough to ruin any amount of video that could implicate him. He ducked outside the room and across the hallway to a totally different elevator when the fire alarm caught up to him, giving a banshee wail. He picked this path to avoid the security guard, and then used John's keycard again to return to the meeting room with all haste. The alarms resonated in muffled form as he rode the elevator back up to the meeting room floor. When it opened, he saw the back of John's head, talking to security. They were just outside the elevator. "She's not answering her phone," John said, addressing the guards in front of him. Michael approached John from behind and clapped a hand on John's shoulder, deftly sliding John's keycard into his coat pocket with the other hand. John spun. "Oh, Michael," he said, not shielding the fear in his voice. He coughed the panic from his voice and found his courage. "Arrest him!" John ordered. The guard hesitated, unsure of what to do, and then received a call through his headset. Michael could only imagine how he'd agitated the hornet's nest now. "Turn around, both of you," the guard ordered, grabbing John and then Michael. More guards appeared, and Michael didn't resist, although John did. John screamed his protests and flailed his body without success. There was simply no way he could overpower the cybernetically enhanced security team. They separated the two of them and pushed Michael into a room, sat him down at a desk with hands tied behind his back, where he waited. Michael studied the room. He was alone, and he had lots of time while he waited for his punishment. He'd failed. He'd been caught. He'd killed Angela and Bradford for no reason. Hell, he'd killed Bob for no reason. Bob was a temper tantrum. Bob had pushed the wrong button. Look where it got Michael. Now it's just a matter of time before they made an example out of Michael. How long were they going to leave him in this room? In the hours that went by, he ruminated over his life, over his career, and found little that he regretted. Bob was an asshole, and whatever good Bob was for the company had faded. Angela and Bradford didn't need to die, but Angela couldn't have been too good ahead of security by how easily Michael had killed her. Michael was almost asleep when the door opened and two security guards entered. "Sorry to keep you waiting, sir," one of them said, and untied his hands. "You're free to go." Michael somehow kept his poker face, although this was the absolute last thing he'd expected to hear. "You guys have everything under control now?" "Yes, sir. John's keycard was used. He seems to be the reason for the heightened security today," the guard said. Michael stood up, eyeing him. The guard leaned in with a small whisper, to keep from being overheard on his microphone. "No idea why he snapped. Might have been the cocaine," the guard said with almost a wink. Michael had to check himself to see if he was dreaming, or if he was already dead. They were truly blaming John? "Nice work," Michael said. To test the reality of this, he headed for the door. No one stopped him. He headed towards his office. He was met with faces of people who had underwent an interesting day and shared it with him. No one knew it was him? Really? But this alternate reality persisted. He changed his clothes. He went to sleep in his office. He attended the follow-up meetings over the next few days. There were several vacant positions, and he was promoted by Jack Sethren himself. The old tyrant had a strange look in his eyes throughout the entire promotion ceremony. And the promotion? Bob's office was now Michael's office, complete with the lookout where it all happened. Bob's personal gym was now Michael's personal gym. Survival of the fittest. And he'd proved himself fittest of all, apparently. As Michael laid down that night, there were two thoughts that collided. The guard on the floor of the CCTV room had seen him with Angela and Bradford. Despite this, they were blaming John because of keycard logs. But that guard had seen him. Another thought he had was after getting off the elevator before his arrest. The security guard was talking to John, and had seen Michael come out of the elevator, meaning the keycard logs were wrong. John was with the guard the whole time. How could they overlook that? Yes, there was chaos and confusion, but still, the security team of Sethren Company was far better than that. Michael hesitated, not wanting to ruin a good thing, and then pulled up the investigation logs. The first thing he noticed was that Jack Sethren had personally signed off on the investigation, and Michael couldn't remember ever seeing Jack's personal signature on anything. With a little more digging, and he promised himself he wouldn't dig much, he discovered there were 2 reports from guards that had been deleted. Michael closed the connection. He wouldn't peek any further. He knew a gift when it promoted him. The guards had reported what they saw, and those reports had been deleted. Jack Sethren himself had signed off on it. Jack Sethren himself had carried the strangest look in his eye during the promotion ceremony. Jack knows, Michael realized. But wait, Jack knows, and he promoted Michael anyways? Michael let this idea percolate as he fell asleep that night. Jack Sethren was a ruthless man. Everyone knew that about him. Maybe he saw Michael and somehow respected his tenacity, his determination. Maybe he was proud of that ruthlessness, saw it as a company asset. Hard to believe, but maybe not. Bob had gone soft. John was a cocaine-snorting weasel, and Michael stepped up to the plate. Maybe? Michael sincerely doubted it. He certainly couldn't confirm it. But looking around at his new office, at the view of the city shimmering before him, he suspected it to be true. Michael took a suspiciously hesitant breath. If that was the kind of man Jack was, and if this was the kind of company that could not only overlook what happened, but actually reward him for it, then Michael could never go soft. He could never let his guard down, never become complacent like Bob, thinking himself invincible because of his position. Michael was a lion in a corporate jungle now, but the young lions were always ready to feast.